My name is Eliana Drew, and I'm 27 years old. I wish I could tell you my story begins with warmth, something soft, something worth remembering. But the truth is, my earliest memories feel more like standing in the shadow of someone else's spotlight, and that spotlight always belonged to my twin sister, Zara. Growing up, my parents treated Zara like she'd been born holding a trophy. She was their prodigy, their gleaming star, the daughter destined for greatness. I, on the other hand, was the other one. The twin who preferred sports over science, sneakers over textbooks, freedom over perfection. My parents didn't openly hate me. That would have been easier. Instead, they praised Zara so loudly that their silence toward me became its own kind of cruelty. They compared us constantly, her grades, her beauty, her potential, against my supposed lack of all three. Every comment landed like a bruise. Our birthday parties made it painfully obvious. Zara always had the princess parties, complete with pastel decor, glittering desserts, and entire flocks of giggling friends. I was technically included, but only enough not to raise eyebrows. Most years I felt more like background decoration than her twin. Sometimes, when her friends stayed for sleepovers, they would drag me into their tea party games. I pretended to be annoyed, rolling my eyes the way a tomboy is expected to. But secretly, I kind of liked it. It was one of the few times I felt invited into Zara's world instead of trapped outside it. The only person who ever seemed to notice me, really notice me, was my grandmother. She brought me chocolate bars, little gifts, sometimes slipped a few bills into my hand with a whisper, "Go buy something that makes you happy, sweetheart." With her, I felt like I mattered. But the older we got, the sharper that favoritism became. Zara's attention turned into emotional bullying. If I got a B, it was a disappointment. If Zara got a B, it was a challenging semester. If I dreamed out loud, my parents mocked the unrealistic fantasies. If Zara dreamed, they marked it on the calendar and began planning for her success. I was good at sports. Really good. Coaches wanted me on the field. Teachers encouraged me to join competitions. But my parents shut everything down. They wanted me to focus on academics like Zara. It was crushing, a cage disguised as good parenting. The final blow during my teenage years came when we started applying for college. Even though they'd set aside equal funds for both of us, they wanted Zara to attend an expensive university across the country, which meant using almost the entire fund for her. They told me that I should be reasonable and go to a community college instead. The rage and humiliation were so intense I still remember shaking. But my grandmother found out, and that gentle woman who baked pies and knitted scarves transformed into a storm. She threatened to cut my parents out of her will if they didn't pay for my college the same way they paid for Zara's. It was the first time I felt someone truly defend me. And my parents folded. College became my liberation. No comparisons. No one hovering, judging, measuring me against my twin. I felt free in a way I didn't know was possible. I made friends easily. I joined late-night hangouts, study groups, and even played intramural soccer. I went to therapy, slowly untangling the knots of my childhood. And somewhere in my second year, I discovered graphic design, almost by accident. I started learning Photoshop, then Illustrator. I watched tutorials at 2 a.m. I practiced until my eyes hurt. I reached out to small local businesses offering logo designs for cheap. Slowly, I built a portfolio, and for the first time in my life, I felt competent, powerful, capable. My parents never asked how I was doing. Zara never called, so eventually, I stopped reaching out too. By the time I graduated, I'd already turned my side hustle into a small income stream, enough that I didn't need a corporate job. I moved into an apartment with 2 roommates, paying my own way entirely. I felt proud of myself, and I had someone else to share it with too. My boyfriend, Marcus, who I met through a college friend. Marcus was one of the first people to ever tell me I wasn't broken. He wasn't perfect. He had a messy breakup with an ex-girlfriend, Lena, who still popped up occasionally with passive-aggressive comments. But he was warm and steady where my family had been cold and uncertain. Still, even in that happiness, I kept my family at a distance. Years slipped by. Zara excelled in her biology major, at least according to our parents. We grew apart. Too many scars, not enough apologies. As my business grew, I encouraged clients to leave online reviews. Some did, many didn't. But recently, one of my biggest clients wrote a long, heartfelt appreciation post on Facebook, praising my professionalism and work ethic. He tagged me. The post spread through his network, and then, unexpectedly, through mine. For the first time ever, members of my extended family saw my name attached to something positive. They left congratulatory comments, sent encouraging messages. It felt unreal, like suddenly people remembered I existed. For a brief moment, I let myself believe things might finally be changing. But as soon as that hopeful thought formed, my phone rang. Not Marcus, not a friend. My parents. People who had ignored me for years, never attending a game, never visiting me at college, never acknowledging my birthday except through Zara, were suddenly so proud and wanted to meet for lunch. I didn't answer at first. I talked with my therapist, with Marcus, and even stared at the phone wondering if I should just block the number. But part of me, an old, wounded part, hoped maybe, finally, they wanted to apologize. So I agreed. We arranged lunch at a public restaurant, somewhere I could walk away if things went wrong, somewhere with bright lights and witnesses, because I knew my parents and I knew the darkness they were capable of behind closed doors. When the day came, my father greeted me with an overly eager hug, stiff and unfamiliar. My mother gave me the same forced smile she used to give my high school teachers. We exchanged surface-level conversation. I could feel the tension under every word. The air felt too thick, too heavy. Finally, I asked them directly, "Why now? Why did you reach out after all these years?" My mother didn't hesitate. She dropped the bomb. Zara was pregnant. 2 months. From a one-night fling. She didn't even know the father's name. Shock shot through me. My throat tightened around my cocktail. But before I could recover, my mother continued. They wanted me to help, financially, because I was doing so well now, and I should support family. In that moment, everything inside me fractured. The years of neglect, the silence, the favoritism, the wounds they never acknowledged. They hadn't come to reconnect. They hadn't come to apologize. They came for money. I asked for the bill, paid it, stood up, and walked out. I didn't look back when I walked out of the restaurant. Not at the table where my parents sat stunned. Not at the doorway where my mother called my name. Not even when my father tried to chase after me with that half-panicked, half-confused expression he always wore whenever things didn't go his way. I didn't owe them a backward glance. But the moment I reached the parking lot, my hands started shaking. Rage, hurt, betrayal, they all stormed my chest like they'd been waiting years for this exact moment to explode. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel hard enough that my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, voicemails. I turned it off. That night, I told Marcus everything. He listened with his jaw clenched, pacing the living room, running a frustrated hand through his hair. "Eli, they only reached out to you because they want your money." "Yeah," I whispered. "I know." He wrapped his arms around me, and for a few seconds, I let myself sink into the warmth. But I couldn't ignore the tightening in my chest, the one that whispered this wasn't new. It was the same old pattern. People loved Zara, not me. They adored her. She shined. I was the background. Marcus kissed the top of my head. "You didn't deserve any of this." I did deserve one thing, though, sleep, but I didn't get any. I lay awake the entire night staring at the ceiling, replaying every childhood memory, every insult, every comparison. Every time Zara was praised while I was ignored. Every time my parents told relatives about her achievements, but never once mentioned mine. Around 6 a.m., after hours of tossing and turning, I turned my phone back on. It lit up like a Christmas tree. Notifications poured in, messages from my mother, missed calls from my father, and then one long, furious text from Zara. Her message was drenched in entitlement. She demanded that I step up and be a responsible aunt. She said since I was finally doing well, I should stop being selfish and send her a few $100s every month. She even added a line about how family sticks together, as if she'd ever stuck with me for anything. I stared at the message for a long time. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. I didn't reply. I didn't owe her one. Later that day, Marcus noticed how quiet I was and tried to lighten the mood. He joked about how his ex-girlfriend Lena had once tried to guilt him into buying her a vacuum cleaner after their breakup because he knew she hated dust. I snorted, then groaned, then laughed. It didn't fix things, but it reminded me that not all relationships were built on obligation and manipulation. Still, the weight didn't lift. The humiliation of that lunch, Zara's audacity, my parents' hypocrisy, it all kept swirling in my head like a storm I couldn't escape. That night, as I sat at my desk staring at my laptop screen, something inside me snapped. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, out of exhaustion. I opened Facebook, clicked Create Post, and wrote everything, every detail, the favoritism, the emotional abuse, the years of neglect, the restaurant confrontation, the demand for money, the entitled text from Zara, the way my parents only cared once my business became successful. I wrote it plainly, honestly, without dramatizing a single thing. Then I hit post, shut my laptop, and went to bed. For the first time in days, I slept deeply. When I woke the next morning and opened my laptop, the screen nearly blinded me. My post had gone viral. Hundreds of comments, thousands of likes, dozens of shares. People I hadn't spoken to in years commented supportive words. Strangers messaged me, telling me they understood, that they'd experienced similar things. It was overwhelming. It was healing. It was terrifying. My parents found out quickly. My mother called 15 times. My father texted paragraphs of mixed apologies and pleas for private conversations. But the most shocking call came from Zara. She was livid. "How could you?" she screamed. "You embarrassed Mom and Dad. You embarrassed me. They're refusing to support me now. Do you understand that? They told me if I want to stay here, I have to get a job. A job, Eli. I'm pregnant." For the first time in my life, I didn't fold. "Zara," I said calmly, "you're pregnant because of your choices. Not mine, not our parents, and definitely not because I refused to give you money." She fell silent for a moment. Then she whispered something she probably didn't mean to say out loud. "I just thought, since you're finally doing well, maybe you owed me." I closed my eyes, letting the words sting for a moment. "I owe you nothing." And I hung up. That night, after another therapy session and hours of reflection, I realized something important. My parents didn't get to rewrite the narrative anymore. Zara didn't get to bully me anymore. So I sent a group text to all three of them. I expect a formal apology for years of emotional abuse, favoritism, and neglect. Not a request, a requirement. If you can't do that, then this is the end of our relationship. I stared at the message for a long moment before hitting send. Marcus sat next to me, his hand resting on mine, warm and steady. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Yes," I whispered, and for the first time in my entire life, I meant it. I meant it completely. Then I turned my phone off, placed it face down on the table, and exhaled. The ball was in their court now, and deep down I already knew. They weren't ready for the truth. But I was. The days following my ultimatum felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way a house feels after a storm rips through and leaves everything scattered. But still. My phone didn't ring as much. The messages slowed. Marcus kept checking on me, even when I insisted I was fine. His presence was like a soft anchor, steady, grounding. Meanwhile, the Facebook posts kept spreading. People shared their own stories in the comments. Being overlooked, growing up in their siblings' shadow, being the disposable child in their family. Reading them felt like therapy I didn't know I needed. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. My grandmother called me, her voice proud and trembling. "I'm glad you spoke your truth," she said. "It was time, sweetheart." Her approval steadied me more than anything else. Throughout the week, friends from college and even a few clients reached out with supportive messages. My inbox, normally filled with design inquiries, became a mix of kindness, validation, and the occasional person asking for advice about their own families. My therapist warned me that emotional crashes can happen after big confrontations, but instead of crashing, something inside me began to settle. I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. I had finally set it down. 3 days later, my parents reached out again. My mother sent alternating messages: apology, guilt, then dismissal, then apology again. Her words felt like someone trying to negotiate with themselves rather than with me. My father kept it simpler, texting that he was sorry, but also asking me to consider removing the post to avoid irreversible damage. Damage. Funny how people worried about reputation only after the truth was revealed. For a long time, I debated whether to delete the post. Marcus stayed out of it, telling me only that it should be my decision, not one made from pressure or fear. Eventually, I chose to remove it. Not for my parents, not for Zara, but because it had done its job. The truth was out, and I didn't want to live in permanent confrontation mode. My mother was relieved, then quickly transitioned into minimizing everything. "It wasn't as bad as you made it sound," she said. "You should have told us sooner," she insisted. "You overreacted." That last one hurt more than I expected. So I told her calmly, "If you blame me for how you treated me, I think we should take a break from speaking." Silence, then a clipped, "If that's what you want." It wasn't what I wanted, it was what I needed. Zara, surprisingly, was the one who stepped up next. It took a couple of weeks. Maybe pregnancy hormones, maybe the reality of adulthood, jobs, bills, responsibility, finally hitting her. But her apology came in a long text, a real one. Not a half-hearted attempt, not a guilt trip wrapped in sorry. She admitted she'd taken advantage of our parents' favoritism. She admitted she'd treated me horribly. She admitted she panicked when she got pregnant because suddenly she wasn't the golden child with a plan. She was scared, broke, and alone. And she realized she had no right to demand help from me. Her words were shaky, but sincere. I remember reading the message over and over, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer. We met for lunch a few days later. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair tied up in a messy bun, hands trembling slightly as she lifted her water glass. "Life doesn't go easy on you once you're finally asked to carry your own weight," she said with a broken laugh. "No," I replied gently, "it doesn't." She told me she was actively job hunting, applying everywhere that would take someone with a biology degree and no work experience. My parents, apparently, stopped funding her life entirely. They let her move back in, but only with conditions: responsibility, structure, reality. For the first time, Zara was getting a taste of what my entire childhood felt like. I didn't want revenge, I just wanted balance. So I helped her rewrite her resume. I showed her how to format a cover letter, how to apply online, how to prepare for interviews. She cried at one point, whispering she never knew how hard the real world felt. We didn't fix everything, but we found a starting point. A little while later, Zara gave birth to a baby girl, a tiny bundle with bright eyes and chubby cheeks. She asked me to be the baby's godmother. The honor made my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect, holding that little girl for the first time. Something inside me cracked open and healed at the same time. "I want you in her life," Zara whispered. "I want her to know you. I want her to grow up seeing empathy and strength, not just success." Her words felt like a door opening. Meanwhile, my parents made their own attempts at fixing things. My grandmother and some relatives had given them an earful after my post went viral, a long earful, and maybe something finally sank in. My mother apologized again, this time without excuses. Her voice shook. She admitted she'd felt embarrassed, guilty, overwhelmed. She admitted she'd failed to see me as a whole person. For years, I had imagined that apology, but hearing it genuinely, I cried in a way I didn't expect. My father tried a different approach: lightness, bonding, rebuilding through action instead of words. He suggested teaching me golf, claiming it would help me mingle with high-end clients. He wasn't wrong. It was clumsy at first, but slowly those afternoons at the driving range became something I looked forward to. Not because of the sport, but because he was trying. Trying mattered. As for my business, it soared. That positive review had already boosted inquiries, but after the viral post, clients began recommending me more than ever. My portfolio expanded, my income skyrocketed, and for the first time in my life, I began to dream bigger. Workshops for students, maybe a small studio someday, maybe even a company. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. My relationship with Marcus deepened too. The crisis had shown me who he was at his core: patient, loving, protective without being controlling. Even his ex, Lena, tried one last petty move, sending him a long message about how stress like this can bring people apart. He showed it to me immediately, eyes rolling, deleting it in front of me. Lena was noise. What Marcus and I had was steady, real, and growing. Finally, my family and I made the decision to attend therapy together. We weren't magically healed. Sometimes sessions were tense. Sometimes old wounds bled. But we were trying to understand, trying to communicate, trying to rebuild with honesty, not denial. 6 months passed. Life felt fuller, brighter, stronger. My niece learned to smile. Zara learned responsibility. My parents learned humility. I learned boundaries. And I